The biogeochemical dynamics of nitrate in closed aquatic systems. Toxicity, accumulation, and remediation strategies. 1. Introduction. The nitrogen paradox in aquatic husbandry. The management of dissolved inorganic nitrogen, or DIN, remains the single most persistent challenge in the long-term maintenance of closed-system aquaculture and ornamental aquaria. Among the nitrogenous species, nitrate occupies a paradoxical position. Historically, it was regarded merely as the benign end product of aerobic nitrification, a safe reservoir for nitrogen waste compared to its acutely toxic precursors, ammonia and nitrite. Consequently, filtration systems were engineered for decades with the sole objective of maximizing the oxidative conversion of ammonia to nitrate. However, contemporary research and advanced aquacultural science have dismantled this assumption of safety. We now understand that nitrate is not a harmless endpoint, but a chronic stressor that acts as a silent, pervasive toxicant, fundamentally altering the physiological baseline of aquatic organisms. In the closed environment of an aquarium, unlike natural open systems where dilution and vast biological sinks regulate nutrient stoichiometry, nitrate accumulates continuously. This accumulation is driven by the thermodynamic stability of the nitrate ion in oxygenated water. Without specific intervention, nitrate levels can rapidly exceed natural baselines by orders of magnitude. Concentrations of 50 to 100 milligrams per liter are common in captivity, whereas natural reef or riverine environments often maintain levels below 0.1 milligrams per liter. This report provides an exhaustive analysis of the physicochemical properties of nitrate, the subtle yet profound mechanisms of its biological toxicity, and the complex biochemical engineering required to facilitate its reduction to dinitrogen gas. 2. Physicochemical properties and thermodynamic stability. 2.1. Molecular structure and behavior. Nitrate is a polyatomic ion featuring a central nitrogen atom bonded to 3 oxygen atoms in a trigonal planar geometry. The nitrogen exists in its highest oxidation state, +5, rendering the molecule highly stable and water-soluble. This solubility is a critical factor in its management. Unlike phosphate, which can precipitate with calcium to form insoluble solids, nitrate forms highly soluble salts with most common aquarium cations such as sodium, potassium, and calcium. Consequently, nitrate does not settle out of the water column and cannot be removed by mechanical filtration. It remains in solution, exerting osmotic pressure and contributing to the total dissolved solids of the system. 2.2. The aerobic nitrification cascade. The accumulation of nitrate is the result of nitrification, the biological oxidation of ammonia derived from fish protein metabolism and organic decomposition. This process is driven by chemolithogeutotropic bacteria that utilize inorganic carbon for biosynthesis and chemical energy from nitrogen oxidation. The process occurs in 2 distinct oxidative steps. Step 1 is ammonia oxidation, also called nitritation, performed by ammonia-oxidizing bacteria and archaea, such as Nitrosomonas and Nitrosococcus. The reaction is ammonia plus 1.5 molecules of oxygen yields nitrite, plus hydrogen ion, plus water, plus 275 kilojoules of energy. Step 2 is nitrite oxidation, also called nitritation, performed by nitrite-oxidizing bacteria, such as Nitrobacter and Nitrospira. The reaction is nitrite plus 0.5 molecules of oxygen yields nitrate, plus 74 kilojoules of energy. The stoichiometry reveals a critical, often overlooked byproduct, hydrogen ions. For every mole of ammonia oxidized to nitrate, 2 moles of hydrogen ions are released into the water column. These protons react with bicarbonate ions, the primary component of alkalinity, to form carbonic acid, which subsequently degrades to carbon dioxide and water. Thus, the accumulation of nitrate is intrinsically linked to the consumption of alkalinity and the acidification of the aquarium environment. 2.3. The phenomenon of old tank syndrome. The coupled accumulation of nitrate and depletion of alkalinity leads to a condition colloquially known as old tank syndrome. This is not merely an issue of water chemistry, but a systemic biological failure. As nitrate levels rise, often exceeding 80 to 100 parts per million, and carbonate hardness falls towards zero, the pH of the system becomes unstable and acidic. In established aquaria, this creates a check engine light scenario where the biological filter may stall. Nitrifying bacteria are pH sensitive. Efficient nitrification is inhibited at pH levels below 6.5. If the pH crashes due to the unchecked acid production of nitrification, the bacterial colonies may cease functioning, leading to a sudden, catastrophic spike in ammonia. This phenomenon is often misdiagnosed as a new cycle or crash. Furthermore, high nitrate levels in old tank syndrome are often accompanied by high phosphate and a buildup of heavy metals, creating a toxic cocktail that compromises fish immunity and inhibits coral calcification. 3. Biological toxicity, mechanisms and thresholds. While the acute lethality of nitrate is orders of magnitude lower than that of ammonia, its chronic toxicity is profound, particularly concerning growth, reproduction, and disease resistance. The toxicity is species-specific and heavily influenced by environmental variables such as salinity, oxygen levels, and water hardness. 3.1 Mechanisms of toxicity in vertebrates, teleosts. 3.1 Methemoglobinemia and oxygen transport. The primary mechanism of acute nitrate toxicity in fish parallels that of nitrite, the oxidation of hemoglobin. Nitrate ions, once absorbed into the bloodstream via the gills, can be reduced to nitrite internally or act directly to oxidize the ferrous iron in the heme group to ferric iron. The resulting molecule, methemoglobin, lacks the capacity to bind oxygen reversibly. This leads to functional hypoxia, meaning the fish suffocates despite ample dissolved oxygen in the water. Clinical signs include lethargy, gasping at the surface, and a darkening of the gills. 3.12 Metabolic and osmorgulatory cost. More insidious is the chronic stress imposed by elevated environmental nitrate. Fish must actively osmorgulate to prevent the influx of nitrate ions or to excrete them against a concentration gradient. This requires the upregulation of active transport mechanisms, diverting energy from somatic growth and immune function. Regarding growth inhibition, studies on freshwater species indicate that fish exposed to high nitrate concentrations exhibit reduced growth rates and slower swimming speeds. The energy budget is shifted from anabolic processes to homeostatic maintenance. Regarding immune suppression, chronic nitrate exposure elevates cortisol levels, a stress hormone that suppresses the immune system. This makes livestock susceptible to opportunistic pathogens, such as Aeromonas and Vibrio, that would otherwise be benign. This explains the sudden death of apparently healthy fish in systems with old tank syndrome. 3.2 Invertebrate sensitivity and physiology. Invertebrates, lacking the robust hepatic detoxification pathways of vertebrates, are significantly more sensitive to nitrate. 3.21 Crustaceans, decapods. Research on the Australian freshwater crayfish, Charax quadricarinatus, revealed that while adult survival was high at concentrations up to 1,000 milligrams per liter, sublethal effects were severe. Nitrate exposure resulted in reduced claw strength, compromising the animal's ability to forage and defend itself. Furthermore, developmental stages are critical. Early larval stages of marine invertebrates may fail to metamorphose or suffer from molt dysgenesis at levels as low as 20 milligrams per liter. Regarding ionic interference, in Daphnia and Cereodaphnia, nitrate toxicity is inversely related to water hardness. High concentrations of chloride and other major ions can competitively inhibit nitrate uptake, offering a protective effect. However, in soft water, nitrate is far more toxic, with inhibition concentration values dropping significantly. 3.22 Cnidarians, scleractinian corals. In reef systems, nitrate toxicity is manifested as ecological imbalance rather than direct mortality. First, zooxanthellae overpopulation. Zooxanthellae are nitrogen-limited in nature. High nitrate triggers their rapid proliferation within the coral tissue. This density increase creates a browning effect, masking the coral's host pigments, and can lead to a parasitic relationship where the algae consume more carbon than they translocate to the host. Second, calcification inhibition. Elevated nitrate interferes with the biomineralization of calcium carbonate, resulting in brittle skeletons and reduced growth rates in small polyp stony corals. Third, algal phase shifts. Nitrate levels above 5 milligrams per liter often cross the threshold for competitive release, allowing turf algae and macroalgae to outcompete corals for space and light. 3.3 Synergistic stressors. Crucially, nitrate toxicity does not exist in a vacuum. Recent environmental research indicates a synergistic relationship between nitrate and other stressors. Regarding thermotolerance, fish exposed to nitrate show a reduced critical thermal maximum. As aquarium temperatures rise, for example during summer heat waves, nitrate-stressed fish are more likely to succumb to heat stress. Regarding hypoxia, nitrate exposure reduces the capacity of fish to tolerate low oxygen levels. This is particularly dangerous in planted or reef tanks at night, when photosynthetic oxygen production ceases and respiration peaks. 3.4 Summary of toxicity thresholds. For marine corals, specifically small polyp stony corals, the recommended safe limit is below 2 milligrams per liter of nitrate, and the critical limit is above 5 milligrams per liter. Physiological effects of excess include browning, tissue necrosis, and growth stunting. For marine invertebrates, the recommended safe limit is below 10 milligrams per liter, and the critical limit is above 20 milligrams per liter. Effects include molting failure and developmental arrest. For marine fish, the recommended safe limit is below 20 milligrams per liter, and the critical limit is above 50 milligrams per liter. Effects include immune suppression and color loss. For sensitive freshwater species, the recommended safe limit is below 25 milligrams per liter, and the critical limit is above 50 milligrams per liter. Effects include reduced fecundity and osmorgulatory distress. For robust freshwater species, the recommended safe limit is below 50 milligrams per liter, and the critical limit is above 100 milligrams per liter. Effects include reduced growth and lethargy, often described as gaspy. 4. Biochemical reduction pathways, the science of denitrification. To remediate nitrate accumulation without relying solely on water exchanges, aquarists must cultivate denitrification. This is a respiratory process performed by facultative anaerobic bacteria that, in the absence of oxygen, utilize nitrate as a terminal electron acceptor. The reduction of nitrate to nitrogen gas follows a stepwise reduction pathway. Nitrate is converted to nitrite by nitrate reductase. Nitrite is converted to nitric oxide by nitrite reductase. Nitric oxide is converted to nitrous oxide by nitric oxide reductase, and nitrous oxide is converted to nitrogen gas by nitrous oxide reductase. This pathway requires two fundamental conditions generally absent in standard filters. First, anoxia or hypoxia. Oxygen inhibits the synthesis of nitrate reductase enzymes. The dissolved oxygen concentration must be near zero, below 0.5 milligrams per liter, for bacteria to switch to nitrate respiration. Second, electron donor, a source of reducing equivalence or energy, is required. This can be organic carbon for heterotrophic denitrification, or inorganic reduced sulfur or hydrogen for autotrophic denitrification. 5. Heterotrophic denitrification, carbon dosing methodologies. Heterotrophic denitrification is the most widely applied method in modern reef keeping. It involves the addition of soluble organic carbon to stimulate bacterial growth. The overarching equation is often simplified using methanol or acetate as the carbon source. For example, 5 molecules of acetic acid acetate plus 8 nitrate ions yield 4 molecules of nitrogen gas, plus 10 molecules of carbon dioxide, plus 6 molecules of water, plus 8 hydroxyl ions. Note the production of hydroxyl ions, which generates alkalinity, helping to counteract the acidification caused by nitrification. 5.1 Soluble carbon sources, vodka, vinegar, sugar. The VSV method, standing for vodka, sugar, vinegar, allows aquarists to fine-tune nutrient reduction. Ethanol from vodka is a potent carbon source. Ethanol fuels rapid bacterial growth. However, overdosing can lead to heterotrophic blooms in the water column, causing bacterial clouding, which strips oxygen rapidly, killing fish via hypoxia rather than toxicity. Dosing typically begins at 0.1 milliliters per 25 gallons and increases weekly. Acetic acid from vinegar is less potent than ethanol. Standard white vinegar is 5% acetic acid. It is safer due to the dilution, but adds a weak acid to the tank, potentially lowering pH temporarily. It is preferred for smaller systems where precise ethanol dosing is difficult. Sucrose from sugar is the most potent and risky source. Sugar is a complex carbohydrate that some bacteria can metabolize explosively. It is notorious for causing slime formations and severe oxygen depletion. While effective, sugar is generally discouraged for novices due to the narrow margin of error. 5.2. Solid carbon dosing, biopellets. Biopellets are composed of polyhydroxyalkanotes or polycaprolactone biodegradable polymers that serve as both the colonization matrix and the carbon source. The mechanism is as follows. Bacteria colonize the surface of the pellets in a fluidized reactor. As they consume the polymer, they reduce nitrate. The tumbling action is critical. It shears off the outer biofilm layer, exposing fresh polymer and preventing the pellets from clumping. Clumping leads to channeling and the formation of hydrogen sulfide zones. Regarding bacterial export, the sheer volume of bacteria produced by carbon dosing, the biomass, must be removed. This is accomplished via protein skimming, also known as foam fractionation. The skimmer removes the bacteria, which have assimilated the nitrogen and phosphorus, completing the nutrient export. Without a skimmer, the bacteria would die and recycle the nutrients back into the water. 5.3. Microbiological considerations. The bacterial consortia involved in heterotrophic denitrification are diverse. Strains such as Paracoccus denitrificans, Pseudomonas, and Hyphomicrobium are common. The introduction of specific probiotic blends can optimize this process. These products use ampule technology, which are nitrogen-flushed glass vials, to preserve dormant strains of Nitrobacter and Paracoccus, ensuring high viability upon dosing, unlike liquid bottle products where bacteria may degrade. These heterotrophs are aggressive competitors. By outcompeting algae for nutrients, they also act as a biological control for nuisance algae. 6. Autotrophic denitrification, sulfur reactors. For large systems or those requiring set-and-forget stability, autotrophic denitrification using elemental sulfur is a superior, albeit chemically complex, solution. 6.1. The sulfur oxidation mechanism. This method utilizes chemolithotrophic bacteria, primarily Thiobacillus denitrificans and Thiomicrospira denitrificans. These organisms oxidize elemental sulfur to sulfate using nitrate as the electron acceptor. The stoichiometric reaction is 5 atoms of sulfur plus 6 nitrate ions plus 2 molecules of water yield 3 molecules of nitrogen gas plus 5 sulfate ions plus 4 hydrogen ions. 6.2. Reactor design and hydrodynamics. The reactor creates anoxic conditions through slow water recirculation. The bacteria colonize sulfur beads. As nitrate is reduced, nitrogen gas is liberated. A critical byproduct of this reaction is protons, effectively sulfuric acid. This dramatically lowers alkalinity and pH. To counter this, sulfur denitrators must route their effluent through a secondary chamber containing calcareous media such as calcium carbonate or crushed coral. The acid dissolves the media, neutralizing the pH and releasing calcium ions and bicarbonate back into the tank. 6.3 Pros and cons. The advantages include high capacity, no daily dosing, and self-regulation because bacteria go dormant when nitrate reaches 0. The risks are that if flow stops, the reactor can go septic, producing hydrogen sulfide, which smells of rotten eggs and is lethal to fish. Additionally, sulfate levels will rise over time, which may require monitoring in systems with few water changes. 7. Passive anaerobic remediation, substrate physics. Passive systems rely on the physical properties of diffusion to create anoxic microzones within the aquarium's hardscape. 7.1. Deep sand beds. A deep sand bed is a layer of fine aragonite sand with a grain size of 0.05 to 1 millimeter and a depth of at least 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters. Regarding diffusion gradients, the top layer, 1 to 2 inches, is aerobic and performs nitrification. As water diffuses deeper, aerobic bacteria consume all dissolved oxygen. Below 3 inches, the sediment becomes anoxic. Here, nitrate diffuses down and is reduced to nitrogen gas. Regarding bioturbation, the success of a deep sand bed relies on fauna, such as worms, snails, and copepods, to slowly turn over the sand and prevent cementation or clumping without disturbing the anoxic stratification. Regarding the depth debate, research and hobbyist experience confirm that shallow beds less than 2 inches are fully aerobic and act only as nitrate factories. The 4-inch minimum is a physical requirement to establish the oxygen gradient necessary for denitrification. 7.2. Live rock and ceramic matrices. Live rock, which are calcium carbonate skeletons, functions similarly. The porous interior provides a cryptic zone for anaerobes. However, studies indicate that the nitrate removal capacity of standard live rock is often limited by diffusion rates and surface area clogging. Engineered ceramic media, such as blocks or spheres, attempt to maximize this internal surface area, but they must be kept free of detritus to remain effective. 8. Assimilatory denitrification, algal scrubbing and lighting. Assimilatory denitrification involves the uptake of nitrate by photosynthetic organisms to build biomass, such as proteins and DNA, rather than for respiration. This is the principle behind refugiums and algae scrubbers. 8.1. Macroalgae and turf algae. Refugiums involve cultivating macroalgae like Chaetomorpha to create a nutrient sink. The algae strip nitrate and phosphate from the water. The nutrients are physically removed from the system when the aquarist harvests the algae. Algae scrubbers are devices that optimize conditions for turf algae growth on a screen. Turf algae generally have higher metabolic rates than macroalgae, offering more aggressive nutrient removal. 8.2. The role of lighting spectrum and PAR. The efficiency of assimilatory denitrification is directly tied to photon flux density, or PAR, and spectrum. Regarding spectrum, algae utilize chlorophyll A and B, which peak in absorption in the blue range of 400 to 470 nanometers, and the red range of 640 to 680 nanometers. Modern LED fixtures are engineered with specific diode combinations, such as royal blue at 450 nanometers, deep red at 660 nanometers, and cool white to maximize this photosynthetically active radiation for refugiums. Regarding penetration and optics, to ensure the bottom layers of a thick algae bed receive light, optics are crucial. A 90-degree borosilicate glass lens provides a concentrated beam angle that ensures high PAR penetration deep into the water column, preventing the lower layers of algae from dying off and releasing nutrients back into the water. Regarding photoperiod, running refugium lights on a reverse cycle, meaning lit when the display tank is dark, helps stabilize pH by consuming carbon dioxide via photosynthesis when the main tank is respiring. 9. Chemical and probiotic interventions. 9.1. Ion exchange resins. Ion exchange offers a physicochemical route to nitrate removal. Strong base anion resins exchange chloride ions for nitrate ions. A major limitation is that standard resins prefer sulfate over nitrate. In high sulfate water, such as marine water, they exhaust rapidly or dump nitrate when sulfate concentrations rise. Nitrate-selective resins, using tributylamine groups, are required to prevent this chromatographic peaking. These resins can be recharged with strong brine or sodium chloride, making them a reusable emergency tool, though less sustainable for chronic management than biological methods. 9.2. Bacterial additives. Products like probiotic blends provide a massive inoculation of heterotrophic nitrifiers and denitrifiers, up to 20 billion bacteria per ampule. These biological boosters are essential for seeding the filters described above, particularly the dormant strains of Paracoccus required for reducing nitrate. The use of glass ampules prevents oxygen infiltration and bacterial degradation during storage, a distinct advantage over plastic-bottled liquids. 10. Integrated management and future outlook. The effective management of nitrate is rarely achieved through a single method. The most stable systems employ a defense-in-depth strategy. Primary export involves efficient protein skimming to remove organic precursors before they become ammonia or nitrate. Biological reduction involves a combination of live rock and sand for passive processing and in high bioload systems, active carbon dosing or sulfur reactors. Assimilatory buffer involves a refugium lit by high-par LEDs to uptake residual nitrate, and stabilize pH monitoring involves regular testing to detect the onset of old tank syndrome, specifically alkalinity depletion, before it leads to system collapse. By understanding the stoichiometry of the nitrogen cycle, specifically that nitrification is an acidifying, nitrate-producing process, while denitrification is an alkalinity-restoring, gas-producing process, aquarists can balance these equations to create a homeostatic environment that mimics the stability of natural aquatic ecosystems.